Thank you, Denise. I know I am supposed to thank you and Joe now because you invited me, but for the first time in my life I will play safe and I will not thank you now. I will thank you after I manage to finish this. So otherwise I will complain against you. My students, they say that it takes 5 minutes to get used to my accent. So I want to take you relaxing and waiting for 5 minutes. Let's hope this is what happens. Today I am going to talk to you a little bit about Photovoice, which is a method. Some are claiming it as a methodology, but we are going to discuss this later. I have been working with this for 2 years now, so I am not a big expert, but I will try to bring here my take on the discussions of using this tool. Uh-oh, here comes the problems. Okay. I will try to talk to you as fast as I can about first the roots of Photovoice, the applications of Photovoice, the concept, what I am calling the conceptual progress of Photovoice. This is one of the weakest parts of Photovoice, is the conceptual development, the procedures, how we do Photovoice. I will bring you some examples. And then the fun part, which is the criticism, the problems, the challenge, because nice is to see what people are talking against.
A little bit for, yes, yeah? Like this.
But he wants, oh, he left.
Very?
Yeah. So I can do whatever I want.
Yeah, exactly.
He said I have to be here. I just see that the guy from the camera also left, so I was complaining. I'm not sure if you can see this picture. Can you, because of the light?
Yeah.
Can you? Okay, and then we have this saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. I have a question for you. How many of you have at this moment a camera or a cell phone, something able to take pictures on you now? Please raise your hand. Okay, I would say more than 50% of the people.
Yeah.
The others probably don't have their bags with them, but pictures became some part of our lives. We have now ability to take pictures all the time. I want you to keep this slide in the back of your mind. We are going to go back to this later on. Now I want Joe and Iken to come here to the microphone and read this for me, please.
Is this a poem?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see. This is totally unscripted. All right.
You said you would do.
Yeah, I know. Diego had never seen the sea. His father, Santiago Kovadlov, took him to discover it. They went south. The ocean lay beyond high sand dunes, waiting. When the child and his father finally reached the dunes after much walking, the ocean exploded before their eyes. And so immense was the sea and its sparkle that the child was struck dumb by the beauty of it. And when he finally managed to speak, trembling, stuttering, he asked his father, "Help me to see."
Thank you. When I first started studying Photovoice, I was actually inspired by this, by the fact that we actually learn how to see. And photography has been teaching us how to see. Since 180 years is the time we have pictures. I also want you to keep this in the back of your mind, and then later on we come back to the idea that we learn how to see. As Denise told you, I am an occupational therapist, and at some point in my life I worked with people who have been transplanted, had cornea transplant. And my goal with them as occupational therapist, this microphone is again
Too close. You're too close.
Just keep back.
It doesn't like me.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. Anyway, my goal as OT was to help these people to understand what they are seeing, so was learning how to see. And I was working with people who have been blind for 10 years, 15 years, more or less. Now it's faster, but 20 years ago in Brazil was the time that you would be in the waiting list to get your corner. So these people would be blind for 10 years, 15 years. And very often they would close their eyes to respond to the questions that I was asking. If I was asking, what are you seeing outside of the window, or what is here close to you, they would close their eyes to try to respond, because it was easier for them to respond with their eyes closed than with their eyes open. So I want you to consider that we are dealing here, when we are dealing with pictures, we are dealing with what we see, but we are also dealing with the way it came to look like the way it looks. I will repeat. What we are seeing, what you see, is not probably the reality. It's the reality as it came to be for us. We learned how to see what we see. We are going to go back to this because I know it's a bit cuckoo for noon. Okay, Photovoice is part of the visual research methods, and it has its roots in participatory, community-based research. I need to stress this aspect because if it's not community-based and participatory, it's not Photovoice. So Photovoice, as it has been defined since the mid-90s, has to be community-based and has to be participatory. We are going to discuss later how much participatory and how much community-based it has been, but this is the idea. Photovoice was named and created by Caroline Wang in Berkeley in the mid-90s. She is still working very, very, very fiercely. She has many, many publications, but you will see in the literature that everybody refers her first work. She worked in China with women, and at some point of her work, she was actually taking pictures of those women, and at some point, she decided to give the camera to those women who she was taking pictures.
You have to get a little bit more distance, or you have to do something like this. You have to keep a distance between you and the...
I know, but the point is, I have a problem because I don't have the return. I don't hear what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that's
But
why I will forget what I'm saying, and that's fine. Okay, so by definition, Photovoice is the use of point-and-shoot cameras in community photography projects. So this is a very simple way in which Caroline Wang defines Photovoice. So I already told you that it has roots in two traditions, and I want you to consider that pictures, they have been considered source of evidence in science for long, long, long while. Forensic medicine, for example, consider pictures to be a very reliable source. Later on, when we discuss the criticism against Photovoice, one of those criticisms is that using pictures in qualitative research is not a reliable source of evidence. So it gives us room to discuss why in forensic medicine a picture that is taken in a way that we have no control is valid, and when you give a camera to a community member to take pictures, it becomes not reliable. So there is a political aspect of how we consider something reliable or not that we have to consider. But we go back later. Another discussion here, and I will go back later as well to this, is that in Photovoice, we are going to use images as text. And the passage from image to text demands some sort of work, a theoretical frame that we have to consider and we have to acknowledge. My goal here is not to discuss with you community participatory research methods, but I need to remind you, and I know you are probably familiar with this, I need to remind you that the idea, the tenets of this kind of approach is to ensure that community members are going to be involved through the research process to produce data that is authentic to the community experience and action. So the idea here is about shifting the ownership of the research project, the research process, the data analysis, and the action that comes out of the research findings. That is the tenets. If we have been doing that, it's something else. But community-based participatory approach was suggested in this way. Those three authors, they are Americans, and they came up with research literature review of the level of participation that Photovoice enables. And the end of their literature review shows that participation is at least questionable in Photovoice. Most of the authors, most of these studies claim that it's quite participatory, but when they apply it, some sort of measurement of participation, the authors question how participatory Photovoice has been. And the main thing is that normally we have been asking people to go around and take pictures. But after this process, the community stops there, and the researchers, they are going to do the data analysis themselves. Sometimes they go back to the community with the material that they selected to elicitate a discussion. But this is not exactly what was meant to be a participatory process. So if you are working under a participatory approach, the whole process is supposed to be participatory. So the research questions, the data collection, the data analysis, the dissemination of findings should involve the community. And this is not what they found in the 31 studies that they were reviewing, and which was the use of Photovoice in health studies. Let's see a bit. Photovoice became quite trendy. If you go to academic group, to the Google Scholar, and put there Photovoice and health, you are going to be just out of your mind, because it's very, very trendy. You can see Photovoice being used everywhere in any shape, form, or way. The applications of Photovoice are known as to enable people to record and reflect their community strengths and concerns, to promote critical dialogue and knowledge about important issues through large and small group discussion of Photovoice, to reach policymakers. Those three aspects are the main goals of Photovoice as Caroline Wang puts it. We have seen in the literature reviews that have been looking at Photovoice, we have seen that the first aspect and the third aspect have been really being used and exercised, but somehow the critical dialogue has been missing in the Photovoice process, because most of the time the Photovoice process is going to be related to the community members taking pictures and telling the researcher their take on an assigned activity, but normally it stops right there. Photovoice has been known as very user-friendly, as I asked in the beginning if you had cameras in your pockets or bags or backpacks, and almost everybody had it. So it's easy to use, it's easy to master, it's fun, everybody likes to take pictures, it's creative, it's innovative, engage people in dialogue, builds trust and rapport, is a flexible tool for different age groups. Photovoice is very applicable for a top-down approach. No.
No.
It's the opposite. It's a down, yeah. Bottom-up approach. Delete. I don't know where it is. It's democratic, provides autonomy for narrative, facilitates disseminations of findings, uncovers positive and negative aspects, is something that you can deal with both aspects of what the issue that you are aiming for, and articulates action plans and facilitates follow-up. Let's remember that one of the reasons that we take pictures is because we want those situations to be fixed for us to review that situation in a later moment. So it has been said that pictures, they create memory, and memory allows us to go back in time and rediscuss some issues. So those are quite well accepted features of Photovoice. But there are some features of Photovoice that I myself have some problems, so I put them in italic to discuss with you a little bit later. First of all, it's always said that Photovoice helps to overcome linguistic barriers and abilities. So you can use it even if people do not have language skills to talk to you. But as are we going to see later on, most of the procedures talk about taking pictures and discussing those pictures later on. So I'm not so sure that using Photovoice with a group which you cannot communicate by language is that easy. I think we have to review this feature. It may be true, it may be not true in some contexts. Some authors have been calling Photovoice a silent tool that helps even very young children to find a voice. Again, finding a voice is a political statement, is a political context. It's not only because you gave a camera to someone that you are going to enable that someone to have a voice. It takes more than a picture. But you are going, if you do a little search in Photovoice studies, very easily people claim that they are empowering people, they are giving voice, and I want to dispute this. I want to discuss, is that true? Is that so easy? Because if it's that so easy, we write to Kodak and send cameras to everywhere, and everything is solved. It takes more than only giving voice. And we have to discuss the whole aspect of voice. Another thing is that it's culturally flexible and adaptable. I also, well, I am not going to discuss culture here today. We have, the rest of our lives to discuss culture. But I want to dispute what is culturally flexible. So what, in fact, the authors are saying is that Photovoice is neutral. So you can apply here, in Africa, in wherever, whenever. And I want to discuss this because the whole thing about the way we see and the way we came to see what we see has to be considered. So culture is a media as well, and we have to consider this aspect, always considering political aspects of the way we describe culture. So it can be very essentializing, saying that, well, we take pictures so everybody understands the same from a picture. Well, I have bad news. We do not understand the same with a picture. We probably understand different things. And maybe this is exactly a good feature of Photovoice. That's probably good that we see many things in one picture. Another aspect that has been discussed is that Photovoice facilitates a revision of time and space. So you can review your concept of time, you can review your concept of space through pictures. Photovoice has been classified, I cannot say this word, I think it's minimal technology, is one of the technologies that triggers memory. So you have a picture and you can actually trigger reminiscence from past times through that picture. This is true for photo albums, for example, and photo albums have been used in research now with actually successful context, but again, the concept and the procedures for Photovoice, they talk about selecting what is going to be pictured in the community. So the idea of memory here has to be contextualized. Let's talk a bit about the conceptual progress of Photovoice at this point. So far, we have many different projects being classified as Photovoice. You have the Photovoice itself, you have photo elicitation, you have photonovela, you have phototalk, you have some works in video diaries and visual texts also using the word Photovoice. So when you start reading about Photovoice, you understand that this is not still very well described. People are still a bit blurred in terms of how they name the process. And photo elicitation is the technique that you use using pictures. I bring here, what I did in the beginning of my presentation was photo elicitation. I showed you a picture, I asked you to look at the picture, and at some point I'm going to ask you to tell me what you see there, and this is photo elicitation. Normally, Photovoice is followed by photo elicitation. You take the picture, you select the pictures. Again, the literature reviews say that most of the time the researchers, they select the pictures, not the community, and then they ask the community to talk about the pictures that they are seeing. So normally Photovoice is used together with photo elicitation. I will give you some examples later on of photonovela as well. Phototalk is exactly the same thing as Photovoice. It's just another way to frame it, but when you read the studies, they are actually talking about the same thing. It has been a big discussion about the underdevelopment of data analysis in Photovoice. I went through a mood, a patriotic mood, when I was doing the research for this talk, because all the articles I was finding, they were American articles, they were written by American authors, and I was whining, oh, Canada is not very, I had to find a Canadian who has been writing about this. Bingo! I found this lady. Her name is Claudia Mitchell from McGill. And guess what? Her article is I'm not patriotic at that point, I'm serious here. She has the most beautiful discussion about using visual. She doesn't talk only about Photovoice, she's talking about visual methods, but she has a lovely, I am going to give you the reference later on. She has extensive work in South Africa, and she has been working with Photovoice, but also with body mapping and drawing. And she has a wonderful, wonderful discussion about the limitations of those methods. So I really, if you don't have, I know you don't have time to read a lot, I want you to read her article. So she is also asking, how do you come to see what we see? And she wants to consider this in her activity. So let's discuss a bit the procedures, how we do Photovoice. So normally, first we have to identify a community issue, then we have to recruit people. We have all the Photovoice process. They encompass training. You always have to train your community members, your participants, how to use the camera, how to take the pictures. You have to have that step in your research project to make sure that everybody is in the same page. You have the camera distribution, you have identification of photo assignments. And some projects are very strict, so you discuss exactly what you want the participants to take pictures. Some projects you're going to see that they are very, very open, and you give the camera and the participant is going to decide what they are going to picture. Then you have the photo assignment discussion. You have to discuss it. You have to make sure that everybody understood. You have the data analysis. You have the presentation of findings. In the presentation of findings, sometimes you have the member checking. You are going to go back to the community. Because Photovoice is related to action, to action research, normally you have that final piece, which is identifying advocates and creating plans for action. Because the project doesn't finish in the end of the research project. You finish with the action. Two methods, they have been suggested for the discussion with the community members. One is called Show It, and it is with the letters that you see in red. And you should ask the community, what do you see here? What is really happening here? How does this relate to our life? Why does this concern, situation, strength exist? How can we become empowered through our new understanding? And what can we do? The literature review that I found says that this method that has been developed by people in Berkeley as well has been faring very badly. The community members, they hate those questions. They cannot understand the difference between one and the other. And they created a second method to try to solve the problems created by those questions. So the second is the photo script. Describe your picture. What is happening in your picture? Why did you take a picture of this? What does this picture tell us about your life? how can this picture provide opportunities for us to improve life? Honestly, I don't see difference. I don't think they improve it. But anyway, photo is a newer process. Some authors, they claim that both systems, they are informed by Paulo Freire work in dialogue. I myself doubt. I don't think Paulo Freire would frame the discussions this way, because one of the tenets of Paulo Freire's work is actually discussing with people how they want to discuss their situation. So coming up with 5 fixed questions, I don't see anything farther than Paulo Freire than this kind of stuff. But anyway, some people, they really need a script, so there you go. I want to give you 2 examples of projects in Photovoice in which I have been working. The first one is with Stephanie Bernstein, one of my students in OT. She went to Tanzania and she performed a very neat study. This is one of the problems. You see the picture is not very clear, and this is one of the limitations for Photovoice. The journals, they are not ready to publish pictures. It's very expensive. And they asked us to transform the pictures in black and white. When picturing black people, is very hard to deal with black and white because you lose quality. You have to have very good lighting. And those pictures, they were taken by the kids themselves with a disposable camera. So we are dealing here with technical limitations. But in this picture, I don't think you can see, we had 3 kids playing. And the whole project was such a nice thing to do, because she went there and she found those kids in a school. What was actually an orphanage. And she had to talk to the chief of the community. She had to have some gatekeepers. It was a long process. Actually, it was short, but was long in terms of how we frame it, the process, the participation of the community. And she discussed it with the kids that she wanted to understand what play meant for them. And she discussed it with them, and they accepted to be part of the process. She gave them cameras, and she asked them to picture people playing, kids playing. We got more or less, I think it was 186 pictures, and we discarded only 5 or 6 that had very bad quality. It was trembling, wasn't so good. But the kids understood, and I think we discarded maybe 3 or 4 where the kids were posing for the camera. But even though they were posing for the camera, they were doing making faces, which is also playing, right? But we decided not to use. But the kids totally understand what she was asking, and they took pictures of them playing. You're going to see, this is a picture of kids playing. They are not looking at the camera, they are playing. And someone taking the picture is really understanding what is the idea behind the project. The thing was that I could not get the ethics group to understand what I was doing. And I was here in Canada fighting with these people who said, no, you cannot take pictures because the kids, if one kid that is playing there is not in the project, you cannot blah, 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 blah. It was very complicated to work around the issues. Finally, we came up with this 3-page Swahili informed consent that was taken there, and I had no clue what was written because it's Swahili, so anyway, but it was a translation. They didn't have the words that we use in the informed consent, so they had to come up with big explanations. That's why it was 3-page. People there, they are illiterate, so they could not read the 3-page. So someone was reading the page for them, for illiterate people who do not understand exactly what is consent process, and she was trying to explain to the kids why she needed those forms signed. And the kids, and she was telling the kids, well, they need to know, people there in my school, they need to know that you agree in participating in this study. And they went, well, yes, we agree. And she said, yeah, but you need to sign. And said, why don't you tell them that we agree? Well, because if I tell them, they don't trust me. And they were saying, but we trust you. Why they don't trust you? So it was a big discussion. Finally, she took a picture of everybody with the consent. Quite funny, the picture. But she wanted to send to the people in the edges, but let's not go there. So that was, I love this picture because of the color, because of the movement. They came up with very, very nice pictures. They discussed the pictures. They explained why they were playing and what was the meaning of the playing for them. It was a quite neat project. Another one that we just published, and I have been involved with, is with undergrad students in my university. And I work with my colleague, Alexandra, and she has been for 4 years now, she has been assigning to the students in the course of, is a discipline called Health and Aging. And they are supposed to go around and take pictures of aging process, what they think is aging process. And they are supposed to write a one-page narrative about the picture. I love this picture. The student took the picture of his grandpa, but he took the picture close to the window, so the picture is very nice. You can see the light in the picture. This assignment has been quite funny because some students, they decide to take picture of elders, so they have to go and get consent. And there is a mall in London where close to a nursery home, and not nursery, nursing home. Nursing is the opposite. I am always in the opposite. A nursing home. And so lots of elders, they go to this mall to have their lunch and to talk and coffee. So the girl, she approached those two guys, a couple, and she talked to them. She said she wanted to take picture of them, and they accepted. She gave them a consent form to sign. They signed the consent form, but she forgot to give them a copy. So she took the whole thing with her. She took pictures of them and she left. Well, the couple goes home and they start saying, what the heck have we done? We signed something. She took pictures of us, but why she did that? They phone their kids and they tell, someone took pictures of us today in the mall and we signed a paper and we don't know what is. So my friend, who is the professor of this course, she's having dinner. She receives a call from the president of the university saying, you better come here because the police is here and they want to know. Apparently someone from your class is taking pictures of people in the so I don't know how the police managed to get to her, but apparently the police interviewed other elders in the mall who had the consent form, and they finally got to my friend. So in this process, one of the things that was clear for me when she invited me to be part of the process, she said, I want to analyze what we have here, but I have no clue. I don't have a qualitative background. I don't know what to do. She had 600 pictures. And you cannot work with files, 600 pictures. How can you analyze that? So this is one of the problems, especially with digital cameras. It's easy to produce data that later on you cannot handle. So we end up selecting 10%. In this article, we are working with 60 pictures, but still 60 pictures is a lot. Let's, oh my God, I will rush. Well, I already told you that the biggest criticism is the underdevelopment of technologies for visual data analysis. We still don't know how to analyze the pictures. We know how to analyze the elicitation of the pictures. What people say about the pictures, but the pictures themselves, we don't know how to analyze. Some studies are now using this Transana software. I don't have experience with this software. It's a software that analyzes the data, the visual data, but I don't have experience with this. Some people, they will criticize Photovoice, asking, is it research or is it art? Does the camera lie? And I like this Goldstein, because he objects, saying that all photos, they lie. Claudia Mitchell, our hero, Canadian hero, she is going to say that we have to put in perspective all the methods that we use. Interviews, questionnaires, it's not only pictures. It's always a take on something. It's never the full reality of what we have. When someone is talking about something, is also talking about a piece of that reality. So the fact that the picture is not the full picture of a reality doesn't mean that we cannot use that system. It's said that there are two types of pictures. Those that provide information and those that provoke emotional reactions. And we can agree with this. So one of the problems in Photovoice is that sometimes the emotional impact of image can overwhelm the researcher and the viewer, and maybe can preclude a proper analysis of content. I brought to Denise a little booklet of a Photovoice project. In fact, it's about women, violence against women. And they take picture of, it's a very complicated thing, but they come up with like a staging process. So the woman describes their raping. They do that like in a staging process. They take a doll, they pretend, they make a scenario of how that raping had happened. They take a picture of that. It's so disturbing that I tried to get one picture of that booklet to bring here, and finally I told Denise, I'm not doing that, because it's very disturbing. So a very disturbing picture probably is very hard to come to terms. So we have to consider what we are picturing and how we are going to deal with this. And after you have the picture there, it's complicated to delete it and to delete it from your memory. Ethical considerations, they have been the big thing for Photovoice. Of course, you have the rights for the participants, for yourself. You have to protect. Denise and myself, we have been working with undocumented immigrants. And of course, we cannot take pictures of these people, because it's exactly what immigration probably would give us some grants. But I don't think we're going there. So privacy is a big thing. The issue of secondary participants, the people who are not a member of your group or your team, but will be shown in the picture. So some authors, they suggest that you don't assign pictures being taken. You cannot take pictures of people. You will work with Photovoice, but not picturing people. But of course, this limits a lot the range of possibilities. Another issue is groups that are unable to give consent. How we work around this. Cost is a big thing. Buying cameras sometimes is complicated. Ethics boards, they are not always prepared. Publications, like I said, they are not. One thing that is interesting, some journals, this Australian journal where we published this Photovoice with the students, they accepted 2 pictures. They said, you can send 2 pictures. Thank you. I have 60. Of course, I don't mean to present the 60, but 2 pictures out of 60 is very complicated. So the publications are not ready to understand what Photovoice means. Another thing is that we can produce more data than we can process, and the technical quality of the material. I want to stress this aspect because every time you have an art-based process, you have to consider quality. Because if you have pictures that are not good in quality, you lose a lot in your ability to analyze the data. There is something that I want to discuss with you in our conversation here. That is the fact that we probably are not well equipped to analyze pictures with the information coming out of linguistic fields, semiotics. There is a full universe of discussion about image that is probably going to be far from our healthy qualifications. I think, I'm certainly becoming old, and I am thinking that maybe I should not stretch myself to areas where I don't have expertise, but nothing prevents us from working with these people who have the expertise in our teams and coming together with analysis that could be more complete, more comprehensive. Probably we don't have a qualification in semiotics, but probably we would benefit from working with visual image in a more in-depth kind of way. We are back to our 1,000 words. So I'm stopping here. I use it more time than I should, as usual. But I want to go back to the idea that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And the way I see that, later on we talk about what you see here, but the way I see that is not that pictures, they tell more than words. I think the way I see this sentence is that pictures, they can tell many, many stories. They can tell stories that, depending where we are able to describe. So this is mainly the message I wanted to give to you. Thank you.